We want to begin with the state of Canada's long-term care homes. Quebec Premier François Legault has a big ask for the federal government. He wants 1,000 members of the military to remain in the province's hardest-hit long-term care facilities until September. That's after a report from the military found some major challenges in those homes, especially in terms of staffing and their use of protective equipment. It's not nearly as troubling, though, as yesterday's report on the situation in Ontario, which laid out horrifying conditions in care homes in that province. Premier Doug Ford says the military will stay in those homes until mid-June at least. So does the military have the resources to continue both of these deployments? Harjit Sajjan is the National Defence Minister. Hi, Minister Sajjan. Good to see you again. Minister, the Premier of Ontario says troops will stay in the province's long-term care homes until at least June 12th. Can you confirm that?
We have received a request from the province of Ontario. We have extended till June 12th. We are right now assessing our current abilities of what the support that we can provide to Ontario and Quebec. Now, keep in mind that, as I've mentioned before, our medical personnel that we have brought in from across the country are needed to do other things. So we have to do a little bit of our own analysis to making sure that we have a good balance.
So right now, the assessment that you've done only provides for until June 12th. Is that correct?
Yes, we wanted to make sure that because the deadline was coming up that we have authorized to June 12th, but we will be looking at the future needs. But let's keep in mind, and it's extremely important, all we can do is buy time for the province to making sure that they can provide the right support, which is desperately needed, of course, but we also need to make sure that we look after our people, and we need to make sure that the Canadian Armed Forces can resume their own activities as well.
I want to ask about those resources in a second, but I do want to also ask you about what the Premier of Quebec said. He is asking for an extension of the Armed Forces in long-term care homes in Quebec until September the 15th. What is your response to that request?
Well, just like anything, when a request is made, I know that our officials are actually working and communicating to look at what we can provide. I understand the needs and the concerns of what Quebec may have, but we're going to have those discussions because it's important for not only the Premier but his ministers to know what the limitations within Canadian Armed Forces are. Our medical personnel, there's only a finite amount of them, and as you know, as we explained before, that we have created teams from medical personnel and non-medical personnel that can go in and provide the necessary support. Now, keep in mind, as you know, that we're also not trained for this type of activity, but we have given those tools, and our troops have done amazing work for this, but to making sure that our elderly get the appropriate care, this is where the province are going to have to work really quickly to making sure they have the appropriate resources, and we'll have those type of discussions of how much more of support that we can provide. But extremely important, as we stated earlier, it's extremely finite, and we will not be able to do this for any prolonged period.
When will you be able to provide a specific answer on the ask for an extension until September the 15th? Like, what is your timeline for making that decision?
Well, we just received the request, so we're going through the analysis now. And in fact, actually, I was talking to General Vance and our Deputy Minister today, so they're doing the due diligence around this, but it's extremely important. The military can buy time to provide that support. This has to be, if we're going to be looking after our elderly, making sure that we get the appropriate trained people into these facilities and within the time frame that we had. Now, keep in mind, this has been some time, and now we need to make sure the facilities that we are in currently is we need to start seeing a plan of how we're going to be able to pull the military out so that the right people can go in and provide that necessary support, because our troops have done amazing things, but we can't sustain this, though.
So, Minister, today the Premier of Quebec did lay out exactly that. So he said that they're going to recruit 10,000 people over this period from now until September, but they need the military there until September 15th. Is that what you're looking for? And again, when will you decide whether that request will be met?
Well, it's great to see that the province of Quebec is now outlining the plan for it, but we need to be able to move very quickly. We obviously will have limitations for ourselves, because when it comes to how the Canadian Armed Forces functions, we need our medical personnel to be able to do the important work inside CAF. So everything from looking after our own people, running our own clinics that look after our personnel, our troops that are overseas. But those are the things that we're going through right now. We've, as the Prime Minister stated, we will always try to do do our part to provide that support, and our troops have. Now we just have to go through that analysis to making sure that we can say, this is how long we can stay, and then the government of Quebec will have to come up with the appropriate plan to be able to provide that necessary support.
Let me ask you bluntly, you know the forces very well, you know the resource capabilities of the forces. Do you think 1,600 members of the armed forces can stay deployed in these homes for another 4 months?
Well, I can assure you we can't do it for this long. Just keep in mind right now, our medical personnel that have gone in, just so that we can provide that maximum support, have been working 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts every single day, right? And we need to make sure that we look after them as well. And so we will always do our utmost to making sure that we can provide the necessary support. But this is how we're going to have those appropriate discussions, because at the same time, you know, some of the leadership in the provincial government may not be fully aware how the military functions. So we'll be able to kind of explain to them what our limitations are, how many people that we have. Keep in mind, we also have our members who have been infected, and we need to make sure that we take care of them. Plus, we need to look at the isolation piece, because ultimately what we want to do, any support that we provide, we want to make sure it's the appropriate support for those elderly. And again, I just want to commend our folks for doing amazing work in a very difficult situation.
Respectfully, Minister, that didn't answer the question. I just want to make sure I'm clear. Instinctually, you know the resources in front of you with the Canadian Armed Forces. Can they last another 4 months like this?
No, as I stated, I said we have, or we will not be able to go that duration just because we don't have the number of personnel. And when you have our people working 7 days a week, it's just not sustainable. Mm-hmm. So we're going through the analysis of saying how long we can go for. Keep in mind, we have already gone into a considerable amount of time, and our folks have not only been working in these facilities, but we had to do the self-isolation away from their families, do the appropriate training. Plus, afterwards, they'll have to go through the same situation before they go back to their families. We want to make sure that we also look after them, but at the same time, we will work with the province to making sure that we can come up with a solution that those long-term care facilities get that support. But I'm sure we'll be able to come up with a plan, but one that is sustainable for the Canadian Armed Forces as well.
Minister, before I let you go, I do want to ask you about another subject, and that is the decision that came down today about Meng Wanzhou and more generally Canada's relationship with China. The Global Times, a mouthpiece really for the Chinese government, says the court decision today that allows for Meng Wanzhou's extradition hearing to proceed is, quote, a move Chinese experts said shows that Canada has completely surrendered its self-proclaimed judicial and diplomatic independence to U.S. bullying and foreshadows the worst ever Canada-China ties. Your response?
Well, first of all, I can say that we are extremely proud the independence of our judicial system, and that's what our democracy is about. And our courts have made a decision, and that will be completely independent from anyone. And I want to also take this opportunity to ask for the immediate release of our two Michaels who have been kept in jail for an extremely long time.
Why are you taking this opportunity to do that? Do you think that this bodes badly for their detainment?
No, as leaders of within Canada, it's my responsibility, like of all cabinet ministers, and they have, to making sure that we take every opportunity to remind the Chinese regime to release our two Michaels who have been arbitrarily detained.
The U.S., the newspaper, which again acts as the mouthpiece for the Chinese government, is essentially saying that the U.S. bullied Canada into making this decision today.
You know what? Our democracy is based on a rule of law. We have a treaty in place, and we respect our treaty, we're abiding by it. But more importantly, our judicial system is completely independent of our political system, and this is something that is extremely fundamental to our democracy, something that we are very proud of. And the courts will make their own decisions, and this case will go in accordance with the independent judicial system. Speaking
of democracy, I also want to ask you about China's new proposed security law aimed essentially at Hong Kong. It prompted U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo today to report to Congress that Hong Kong was no longer autonomous from China. Is Canada considering following suit?
Well, we're very concerned about what's happening in Hong Kong, and we have obviously a lot of Canadians who are in Hong Kong as well, and we respect people's rights to be able to have a peaceful protest, and we also call upon any of the security forces or any of their government to making sure that they don't have excessive response to peaceful protests.
But you're not considering following suit with the U.S. and making any declaration where Hong Kong is concerned?
Well, at this time, we're monitoring the situation extremely closely, but we will always stand up for the human rights of Canadians all around the world.
Respectfully, Minister, what do you have left to monitor before you condemn the actions of the Chinese government here?
Oh, no, as the state is, we monitor them not only from monitoring extremely closely for a very long time. This is about making sure that we send a very strong message of when it comes to human rights, something that we have done every step of the way, and will continue to do so.
Respectfully, again, your critics say that actually your government has done the exact opposite, that by only saying you're concerned and not going any further in this particular incident, you are in fact doing the opposite of what you just laid out. You are not standing up for human rights.
In fact, actually, I respectfully disagree with that. Any opportunity that we get, we have always been extremely vocal when it comes to human rights, whether it's standing up in Hong Kong or any other parts of China or around the world. We will always stand up because that's exactly what Canadians' values are, and they expect of their leaders, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you, Minister Sajjan. Appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you so much.
So how long can the armed forces stay deployed in these homes? General Rick Hillier is a former Chief of Defense Staff. He joins us now. Hi, General Hillier. Good to see you. Thanks for making time for us.
My pleasure, Vashi.
I wanted to start off on that question of resources. 1,600 members of the military, more than I should say, 1,600 members of the military right now are deployed in those homes in Ontario and Quebec. Quebec's asking for a 4-month extension. Essentially, you heard the ministers there say, we can't probably last that long. How long do you think this can go on? How stretched, rather, or should I ask, how stretched are the resources of the military?
Well, first of all, I may not support the minister's comments. He's briefed thoroughly. He knows exactly what the situation is, and I do not have that same kind of detail. But I'll simply say this. The people in those homes are medical specialists by and large, and there are more than 1,000 in Quebec, the last I heard, more than 200, around 275 in Ontario. And that is a huge percentage of the medical capacity that we have in the Canadian Armed Forces. And so when you talk about staying a longer period of time, if you're working every single day for 12 hours a day, at some point in time, very soon, people start to break. And when they start to break, then you lose the capacity completely. So no, you can stay there a while longer. You can downgrade the kind of support or the numbers in particular that you provide, maybe move out of some homes and come out, in a downwards curve over the next days and weeks. But I don't believe you can stay there over the longer term. Didn't have the people to do it in the Canadian Armed Forces. We don't have them now, and you don't want them to carry the weight of a nation that's really ignored the problem for years and years.
The minister talked about how these members of the military are working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. They've already been there for a number of weeks. Can you talk a bit about the potential impact here on morale and the pressures on the personnel?
First of all, the pressures, the stresses on those men and women are incredible. They're in a dangerous situation, as we know. They're picking up when somebody else or others have let the ball drop and people are dying or have died. And they're under huge risk themselves, but so are their families. And their families are frightened to see them deploy. They're worried what could occur to them. They're away from home, away from their children, away from their husbands or wives or partners, and they're away from that support mechanism. So the stresses are enormous. And possibly these folks have just come back from missions abroad or other deployments for training or preparation around Canada and around the rest of the world. And so, yeah, the stresses are great. And one of the great concerns that I have right now is that as we deploy people and build that extra stress because of the threats to their lives and their worries that their families have for them, the support programs that we had in place across Canada with many of the military nonprofit organizations or military support charities like True Patriot Love, their funding has all but disappeared because of course, COVID-19 and the impact on the economy. People aren't giving, companies aren't giving. And as a result, the programs that they had in place to support the families, just when now they are needed most, are also disappearing. And so I actually think, $20 or $25 million would be well spent by our federal government of Canada to use an agent like True Patriot Love or perhaps some of those other military support nonprofits, continue that support to the families, continue it to the soldiers, sailors, airmen and airwomen and their veterans when they come out of those missions, and make sure that we don't break them because we failed to look after them with the stresses that they face. I think we could do those things, and given the hundreds of billions of dollars that we're spending, it would be a pittance.
That's an excellent point, and I'm really glad that you highlighted it, because I think we're very focused on sort of the acute situation right now and the dangers that these men and women are facing, the efforts that they're going to in these homes. But when you read that report yesterday out of Ontario about what they are witnessing, certainly, that won't be easy to deal with going forward either.
Actually, I read the report, and first of all, I went right to the signature block. Okay, Brigadier General Conrad Malinkowski, an awesome Canadian, a superb leader, and when he signs his name to a report like that, I have complete confidence that they are stating, if anything, understating just how bad it is. I had two extreme emotional responses. Number one was sickening. Oh my goodness, oh my God, how have we let this occur? And as I went through all the different incidents and recorded episodes, many of which are not reported on the media here because there are just so many of them. And the second one, I have to say, was my heart was bursting with pride, because this is what you get when you send in those professional men and women, Canada's sons and daughters who wear our nation's uniform, who have developed their skills, who have owned their experience and their skills and their training on operations around the world, all to be ready when Canadians at home need us. And they're going in there and they're going to do the honest work. They're going to be absolutely clear in what they see and do, what the need is. They're going to report it because they operate on those incredible values. Every penny we spend in the defense budget, and is not nearly enough to produce people like that and a capability that we can fall back upon as we are doing now, is worth it, and we should spend more.
On that point, it's interesting that you say that the second sort of half of how you felt, the amount of pride, because the number one reaction I've had from, and I've spoken over the past few days to a number of people who have family members in these homes, is gratefulness that the military had the ability and the courage to put forth what they were seeing, to shine a light on the things that they knew their family members were going through, but perhaps didn't have the ability to sort of, draw the attention that was necessary. And I'm wondering if you could help us understand how it might work, that the military would see that and that they would, is it automatic that they report what they see? Is it that they felt, they have to feel compelled to? How might it work?
Well, first of all, every single man and woman there operates on a set of values that they have been educated to, they have adopted and adapted to, and they work by, and in fact, they live their life by it. So when they see things, they have it as their professional duty, as the great people that they are, to make sure something is done about it, and either intervene right away and improve the thing if they possibly can, but certainly to make sure it's reported. But when we go on those missions, and those men and women in uniform go to do a mission, the first thing they want to do is improve. They want to learn. They want to get better every day. They want to make the situation better every day. And one of the things we've learned over hundreds of years of military service and operations is you record what you're doing, you report it back up, you allow the assessments to come together and the situational report be developed. And from there, from knowledge, comes the ability to take actions which have the maximum effect. And, when you're into situations like this, and I understand people have moms and dads and grandmothers in homes and they can't get to them, perhaps have not heard from them, and knowing the death toll in the long-term care facilities, they're very worried about them. One of the first things that people want in times of crises like this is psychological security. And I think that's what those men and women in uniform, those incredible Canadians, our sons and daughters, bring: psychological security in those kind of circumstances.
I just have a minute left, but if you don't mind, I would like to ask you about some news that we got just as the show was going to air, and that is that the Cyclone helicopter has been recovered, along with the remains of some remains found nearby of course the Canadians who were on board that helicopter. It was found 3 kilometers below the surface. How I guess what is your reaction to the fact that they were actually able to find the helicopter?
Vashi, I had said just after the crash that one thing you can count upon is the Canadian forces will do the most detailed, exhaustive investigation that is humanly possible. The experts are there to do it. Sadly, we've had some experience in doing those things, and they will leave no stone unturned. And with the assistance of our allies, you can get down and just think of the challenge here: 2 miles underwater, finding that wreckage, identifying exactly what it is, mapping it out on the seafloor, finding perhaps the remains of folks, and then now going through the process of recovering the essential pieces so the investigation can come to a conclusion and we can reduce the probability that something like that would ever happen again, and maybe give people some confidence that we've got it right. It's an incredible challenge. I'm so proud of people when they go and do it. Rest assured, the Canadian Forces will find out what went wrong. They'll take the steps. We'll know it from them, and they'll take the steps to try and make the probability of something like this ever occurring again extremely low.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much, General Hillier, for your time this evening. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Vashi.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.